All of the art in an Illustrator document goes on an artboard. You can think of them as pages, except that they don't all have to be the same size. You can have an Illustrator document that has multiple artboards, and each artboard, if you want, could be a different size. The file I have open here is called PLP Logo 2, and you'll find it in the Chapter 1 folder of the project files. And right now this file has only one artboard. Let's say you're creating this logo and you're not really sure which you want, the lighter one or the darker one, or maybe you need to show this to your client and let the client decide which one. So rather than splitting this into two different documents, let's create a new artboard so we can have them both laid out in front of us, all nice and neat. So first of all, make sure that you have the regular selection tool. And over here on the right side, you see the very bottom panel is the artboard panel. And you see it shares a group with the layers panel. And you know that because they're kind of both grouped here with a sort of like little striped bar. So just click this icon here for artboards. It pops out and you see there's layers. We'll talk about layers later on in this course. And we can see this one artboard is simply called Artboard 1. To create a new artboard is just a single mouse click. You see down here on the bottom we have a bunch of little icons, and 3 of the 4 are grayed out. We have only one that's available, and that's this kind of new page looking icon for new artboard. And click that. We have a new artboard, and now in addition to Artboard 1 we have Artboard 2. Now there's a couple of ways that we can see both of these artboards at the same time. One way is, well, actually maybe there's 3 ways. One way is you can use the little scroll bar here to scroll there. Or you could use a shortcut that I showed you earlier. Hold the space bar down so you get the grabber hand, and then drag until they're both in the window. But there's another nice little shortcut. Let me just kind of drag this back to where it was here. And that is, I showed you earlier that if you press Control 0 or Command 0 on the Mac, that fits the artboard and window. But when you have multiple artboards, press Control Alt, or on the Mac that would be Command Option, and 0. And that fits all of the artboards on the screen. So in Windows, it's Control Alt 0. On the Mac, it's Command Option 0. So now we can move these apart. Just take the darker logo and drag it over here. And by the way, as you're dragging it, you notice you have that kind of fleeting green line there that kind of comes and goes. That's called a smart guide, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And I'll take this lighter logo, I'll drag it down here. Okay, so this is what happens when we create a brand new blank artboard and then move stuff onto it. But what would have happened if we took the original sole artboard and duplicated it? Well, let's undo a few times. Now you could undo either from the Edit menu and choose Undo, or you could press Control Z or Command Z on the Mac and do that enough times until you get this one single artboard back. Now I'll just kind of put this into view. This time what you want to do is, instead of just clicking the new artboard button here down at the bottom, take this Artboard 1, put your mouse pointer on it. You see when you do, your mouse pointer becomes a hand. Just drag down until you're on the new button here. You see there's a little plus sign now on the mouse button, and let go. And now you've duplicated. I'll press Control Alt 0 or Command Option 0 on the Mac. And now you see you've duplicated the artboard and the stuff on the artboard. And instead of this being called Artboard 2 or Artboard 3, you see it's Artboard 1 copy. But I don't really want both logos on both artboards, so let's just do a little bit of deleting. Let's select the darker one here and delete, and select the lighter one here and delete. And you can move them around if you want. Let's give these artboards more meaningful names than simply Artboard 1 or Artboard 1 copy. Double-click right here on the artboard, double-click that Artboard 1, and you see it kind of opens for editing, and I'll call this Light Logo and press Enter, and double-click this one here, and I may need to reselect it, call it Dark Logo, and press Enter. Now another way you can manipulate these is, right now I have the second artboard, the dark logo artboard, selected, and you see I have this little up arrow. That will move it up in the panel, and that simply brings it up to the top. Doesn't really change anything on the screen, but just if you decide you want that one to be the first artboard. And maybe I'll put it back. I'll take the dark logo and hit that down arrow, and it moves it down. So that's really just a matter of convenience. But there is another way of manipulating artboards, and that is with the Artboard tool. Let's go all the way over here on the left side of the screen, and you see you have this button here, kind of looks like a tic-tac-toe symbol, and it's the Artboard tool. Click that, and you see up here on the screen, this shows you that this is artboard number 2 called Dark Logo. You have dotted line and some handles here, and this one shows you what's the name of this artboard, and you could just click it. And you could resize the artboards right here as long as you have that Artboard tool. So for example, I'll grab this over here, and you see when I put my mouse pointer on this sizing handle, my mouse pointer becomes that two-headed arrow. So I can resize this artboard. I could make it narrower or wider. I'm just going to undo. Press Ctrl-Z or Command-Z on the Mac. You could also manipulate the artboard up here on the control panel. So you see you have the width and the height. So I know that these artboards are both 8 inches wide by 8 inches high. Let's say you want to create a new artboard, but you don't want to duplicate this one. So that is, you don't want to take one of these and drag it on here. You don't want to click there. Maybe you want an artboard of completely random size. Just hold the spacebar down just so I can drag over here to the left. And notice when you put your mouse pointer out here on this kind of blank gray area, the mouse pointer, the Artboard tool, is kind of like a little box with a, I don't know, antennas on them. Just drag, just kind of like that. And boom, you've now created a new artboard. And now this is Artboard 3, and there it is named Artboard 3. You can now draw on the artboard, you can resize the artboard as long as you're using that two-headed arrow. If your mouse pointer is in the middle and you have that four-headed arrow, you could move it around anywhere you want. And you see it's really the same thing as doing it by number up here. You know, I really decide that I don't need that artboard after all. I want to delete it. So you can simply take this new artboard and drag it down into the trash. And it's gone. And again, I'll press Control-Alt-0 or Command-Option-0 on the Mac so that I have the other two artboards fit in the window. Let's look at a few other ways of manipulating artboards. Another file I have open here is called Party, and you'll also find this in the Chapter 1 folder of the project files. And you see these are some party-related symbols that come with Illustrator. And what if we want to shrink the artboard to fit the artwork? That is, we're not going to make the artwork bigger, we want to make the artwork smaller. Well, sure, one thing you could do, as long as you still have the Artboard tool, is you could grab the corner handle here and drag it up, kind of like this. So I'm just going to undo, press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac. But another really nice feature you could do is, you see up here under Presets, right now this says Custom. If you click that down arrow, you see where it says Fit to Artwork Bounds up here at the top. If you click that, boom, now the artwork shrinks so that is exactly as wide and as tall as the items on the artboard. Now, a little while ago, I showed you that you could duplicate an artboard simply by taking the artboard in the panel and dragging on top of the new Artboard button. But you can also duplicate an artboard kind of like you duplicate an object, and that is put your mouse pointer, again, we still have the Artboard tool, put your mouse pointer on the artboard so you have that four-headed arrow. Hold down the Alt key in Windows or the Option key on the Mac, and you see the mouse pointer becomes this kind of two-headed arrow, and just drag to the right. Now, as I'm dragging, you see I'm duplicating the artboard and the stuff on there. If I've had maybe a little too much coffee and I'm not being very steady dragging the mouse there, I can hold down the Shift key, makes it a little easier, sometimes maybe, and drag this over here to the right. And now I've duplicated the artboard and the stuff on it. But I've decided I really don't need that after all. Now, I showed you earlier that you could delete an artboard by taking the artboard here from the panel and dragging it into the trash. You really don't have to drag, as long as you have this artboard here selected. So make sure that your duplicate artboard there is selected in the Artboard panel, and then just click the trash. And it goes away, but notice that it leaves the stuff. If you want to delete the stuff, you can maybe get your selection tool here, and then just see where I have my mouse pointer here. I'm just going to click and drag upwards like that. So I have these items selected. You can see the bounding box for each one, and now just hit the delete key. So you've deleted them. So you see, it's not precisely like taking the item and dragging it here. It really depends on what you're looking to do. And one last thing about artboards is you can set some options. Let's go and get the artboard tool back again. And you see up here on the control panel, somewhere in the middle, you've got this little icon here. It looks like a little box with a couple of bullets in there. And if you roll the mouse pointer over it, the little pop-up tells you it's artboard options. So click that, and this gives you the options of this particular artboard. You can change the name, again, the presets, kind of like we were doing before, fit to bounds, or you can have a specific size if you want, change the width and height, orientation, portrait or landscape, and a number of others. I don't really need to change anything here, but I just want you to know what those options are, so I'll just cancel out. And you have to have at least one artboard in a document. So that's why we have this one artboard. You can see it here. The trash can is grayed out. You can't have a document without an artboard in it. So you can see it's a very good, useful thing to know how to manipulate and manage artboards in Illustrator.